control of this industry. Let's face it, we had a situation last Thursday where the chief executive of Southern Water defied the bonus ban. The company doubled his salary. On Friday, we had a situation where a 60% increase in serious pollution incidents. And yesterday, government, in the lead up to this, was laying claim to a whole raft of initiatives that were actually things put in place under the previous Tory government. I'm afraid today, I had no expectations for this at all, and today I've not been disappointed. So John, I think, has confused this issue. He seems to feel that this is an issue of public trust, where in reality, at the beating heart of this debacle is that corporate greed, the financial engineering, the exorbitant salaries, all of the £84 billion worth of our money water companies have made off with. We were needed, we were promised a proper written branch wide-ranging review, including ownership and structure. We were promised champagne. All we've actually got is sour milk.
I'm going to let
Excuse me while I
put your earpiece in.
This.
Will you do that? And I'm just going to remind people of what this report says. So 88 recommendations. It's a major review. It affects England and Wales. The most eye-catching of all of them is a suggestion that Ofwat, the regulator that we hear about all the time, should effectively be scrapped and its powers brought in with other bodies to try and simplify it and make regulation easier.
So we've talked about Ofwat a lot on this programme, so that's really one of the interesting things that has come out of this report this morning. And I wonder whether by now, like a true pro, Feargal Sharkey has got his earpiece. He has. There he is.
I have indeed.
Not
listen,
your first rodeo. So what do you make of this?
It is.
No more Ofwat.
I think John and I agree that both Ofwat and the EA are utterly dysfunctional and discredited. But here's my issue. I do not understand how you can have a discussion about abolishing Ofwat without adding the EA to that list, because they have jointly regulated the water industry for 35 years. And equally, you then have to have a look at the role ministers have played in this debacle. And the reason I say that, the board of both Ofwat and the EA are personally appointed by the Secretary of State for the Environment, and both those organisations have to have regard to statutory guidance, rules, framework issued by the Secretary of State for the Environment. And that, again, is, I think, a point that John missed. We need that complete review, including Ofwat, including the EA, including the role ministers played, because they are just as culpable as any failed system of regulation. A very big disappointment. So
when you say the EA, just to make clear to people, we're talking about the Environment Agency, because there are all these different bodies and representatives involved in water. It's such a complicated picture, isn't it? So for people who are watching this morning, who are thinking about what they pay for their bills or the state of the river where they like to go and swim, how much difference do you think this report will make if the government actually enforces these recommendations that have been published today? Well, you are correct, of course. These are only recommendations. Government can ignore all of them. Sadly, I think little of anything. If you replace Ofwat, all you end up with an organisation that looks like Ofwat, probably staffed by an awful lot of the same people, and you do nothing more than change the brass sign on the front of the building, because Sir John, by the way, by government, was forbidden, in his terms of reference, was forbidden from getting into the nub of the issue, that corporate greed, the abuse, the exploitation of customers, the exploitation of the environment. And sadly, that situation is going to continue. Government seemed determined to safeguard those shareholders, safeguard those companies at the expense of customers and the environment. By which you mean that nationalisation, renationalisation was not part of this review. That wasn't one of the things that he was looking at. We've heard from the government this morning who was saying, look, that would just be too expensive, that is money that would be better used for the health service, for the NHS, rather than paying off shareholders. What do you say to that? Well, there's two things. To say that if you nationalise the water industry, that would impact the NHS, it is, quite frankly, economically illiterate. And the figure that government bandy around, and I'm genuinely flabbergasted, that £100 billion figure comes from a think tank report bought and paid for by 4 water companies. And I've now seen the breakdown. According to that calculation,
Thames Water today is apparently worth £21 billion. Well, that's clearly an act of fantasy. And this is part of that failure on the part of government to really get into the nitty-gritty, to get into the mud of all of this. And I'm afraid that's simply another source of disappointment. All round, I genuinely think at this point, the first year has been so utterly chaotic that I think the Secretary of State should actually now be considering his role in all of this over the last 12 months. Quite frankly, I think Steve Reid now needs to resign and hand the job over to somebody that could be more effective, more capable.
And Feargal, why do you think specifically he should go?
Because government's had 14 years to actually prepare for this. This very issue has been significant public concern and interest for the better part of 7-8 years ago. That announcement on Friday, that 60% increase in serious pollution, government didn't have a plan, they didn't have a strategy, and if anything, Friday demonstrated they certainly have no control over this industry.
OK, but I'm imagining I'm in number 10 this morning and I'm hearing you're calling for the Secretary of State to resign on a day when we're talking about reforming the industry and they've only been in government for a year and they're going to think, surely that would just create more uncertainty, more chaos, more change, wouldn't it, realistically?
Well, there's another view that basically says all of this could have been fixed on the day they came to office. Let me remind everyone, Steve Reid, with a stroke of a pen, can remove the board of both the Environment Agency and Ofwat, replace them with new board members, and with a stroke of a pen can amend the statutory guidance they have to act upon and order them to get out there and robustly and proactively enforce the law as it stands. Ofwat has got plenty of teeth. It simply refused to bite. And